Hello everyone, welcome back to another video from Learner's Path. And today we have with us a very special guest, Dr. Mary Jane Arneaud. I'm actually very excited to have her today. And so I'll give a very short introduction. She is an assistant professor in the School of Social Sciences at Heriot-Watt University Dubai. She's done some very interesting research on ethnic identity and social well-being. And I had the honor to meet her from a school program where she helped me in my research for the links between familial relationships and postpartum depression in Asia. And so I'll give the honors to Dr. Mary to officially introduce herself.
Hi everybody. As Zing said, I am a lecturer in psychology. I have a PhD in developmental psychology from the University of the West Indies, which is a university in the Caribbean. And my research is about the relationship between ethnic identity and psychological and social well-being. And currently I teach courses as part of teams on social psychology, cross-cultural psychology, and a writing course called Academic Skills in Psychology.
Yes. And so please do share with us how you got started with the field of psychology and why did you pick psychology?
Yeah, actually, how I got started in psychology was really random. It was only because I had a friend who had an introduction to psychology textbook. So when I would go to his house, I would read from this textbook, and I just found it was super amazing. And then once I went to a retreat as a teenager, and um, like this lady was giving a talk at the retreat, and she was a psychologist, and she was talking about developmental stages. I don't remember if she was speaking about Freud or if she was speaking about Erickson, but I just felt like, oh my gosh, this lady understands everything. And I just got interested in psychology as a field. So, when there were opportunities, I would just kind of read whatever I can find about psychology. So that was really how it happened, just really kind of accidental and random.
Yeah, what a story. But about that, what was your favorite part about psychology? And, if you want to share, what is your least favorite about psychology?
Oh, for sure. I can share about both. So my favorite part of studying psychology was when I was a student, having one of my lecturers, my statistics lecturer actually, come and ask me if I wanted to be a research assistant with her. And so I got to learn about research. And like as a child in school, like in secondary school, I always kind of wanted to have a job where I was reading and writing for a living, right? And this was exactly what researchers do. They read and they write. The third thing is that they analyze data, which is probably my least favorite thing about psychology because it is statistics. And I don't think I'm particularly brilliant at that. But the good thing about not necessarily being brilliant at statistics is that you don't necessarily have to do everything on your own. So for example, if I write a paper and I collect data, yes, I can analyze the data on my own, but I can also ask one of my co-authors to do that for me if I really, kind of rather not go through the stress of SPSS.
Yeah. So I guess research is really weaved into psychology, right? And so a lot of people is also asking me in my school, what can someone do career-wise with a higher education in psychology?
All right. I'll just say one thing before I talk about careers, about research, before I speak about careers. So yeah, research is really weaved into psychology because psychology is a social science, right? And science is about evidence. So you need to collect data in order to even have the discipline. So research is like integral. So even if you are an undergraduate student in psychology, you begin contributing to research in psychology because you have to do well, in different schools it's called different things, but you have to do a final year project, right? So you will collect your own data, do your own literature review, write it up. And in some cases, students actually get their undergraduate projects published with whoever their supervisor was. So you can actually begin contributing to research as an undergraduate student. With regard to careers, well, the obvious ones are like probably going into counseling psychology or clinical psychology. But I have noticed here that students often get internships in human resources, for example. So it's not at all limited. And then psychology has several disciplines within it. So you can do educational psychology, for example, and I guess people who do that might lean toward the education system in some way. They can also stay in academia and work as education psychologists, but I suppose some people would do that and probably want, if they wanted to be a teacher, for example. Um, so yeah, it's there. I would say that there's really no limit to what you can do as a psychologist.
You can go to a lot of different fields as well with psychology, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and so during your university days, right? Or maybe even now that you give lectures in Heriot-Watt, um, what are the common stereotypes that people think psychology majors have, and are they true?
Common stereotypes. Oh, I think that if people hear that you're a psychologist, one of the immediate things they kind of react and do is to say, okay, I'm going to be quiet now, because they automatically assume that you're analyzing them or something. And of course, all of us are not trained to analyze people. And certainly, I think even people who are trained to analyze people probably would not do so in a casual conversation. So I think that that is a common misconception, that like we are just sitting and listening and making evaluations about your personality or something, but really, no.
That's actually very interesting. I actually, when I was a kid, I thought that those who took psychology, they could read minds. And so that's
Yeah,
why I really wanted to take that. Yeah.
yeah.
Um, and so for those who are confused whether to pursue psychology or not, what's a word of advice that you would give to them?
All right. So psychology is really about understanding human behavior, essentially, at its very core. So if somebody has an interest in understanding thoughts, feelings, and behavior, then psychology is a good discipline to start with. And it's probably worth bearing in mind that, you know, just because you start doing something, it doesn't mean that you have to continue doing that thing. Like a degree in psychology can probably like complement some other thing that you might realize over time that you might be as interested in, you know? So um, yeah, if you're confused, I would say you can kind of use that to help you decide. If you think that your passion is understanding human behavior, then I would say doing a degree in psychology is a great place to start.
So it's like a really people's field. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's probably the most basic people's field, you know? Yeah.
Yeah. And now I want to talk about your academic journey. And so I read your post about how you got about with psychology and where you are right now. And so while reading that, I really wanted to ask you, what kept you going, even when your environment did not or could not support you?
Yeah. So I was thinking, you know, I wrote that post because of you asking me about this interview, and I just kind of wanted to write my thoughts out to kind of have them coherent before we actually spoke. Um, so yeah, I would say the things that kept me going internally were was it was just one thing really, just being persistent.
Mhm.
Um, and I would say externally, the support of the people in my life. So um, you know, I told you in a follow-up email that I think that diligence is great for success, right? But I also think that the environment, whether it is the people who you are interacting with or the actual physical environment,
Mhm.
are really important in supporting anybody's academic journey.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's very true. And actually, we had an interview before with senior high students in the Philippines in Ateneo and UST, and they shared how, we shouldn't put too much focus on the students themselves. They shared a lot of complaints about their educational system,
Yeah.
and how a lot of reformation in education should be done in the Philippines. And so that is very true. Um,
Yeah.
so what advice would you tell your younger self when you're in university or when you're getting a in psychology?
I don't know if I would tell my younger self advice, but I would tell that person that you are actually going to get the PhD, because there were times, at least twice, and this was actually because of having to analyze data and not feeling, very confident about it. When I went to my thesis supervisor and I told her, I am done. I'm not doing this. I'm not good at it. And clearly, I don't belong in higher education. It was a mistake that I even thought I could be here. And her reaction was like, Mary, SPSS is not going to blow up. Your computer is not going to blow up. You can do it. And when you have your PhD, as I said, somebody who enjoys analyzing data can collaborate with you. And so you don't have to like feel that burden only on yourself to do something that you're really not enthusiastic about. I will say though about statistics, it does get easier over time and with practice. And there are also many resources available in addition to, like if you have somebody who enjoys it and they can work with you. But, they have a lot of YouTube videos now with professors from various universities showing you how to do analysis. So I wouldn't be like right now, I don't have that big challenge that I used to have with statistics anymore. But I would tell that self who was going through the process is that, I am actually going to achieve it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. And a follow up to that, did you ever like when you were in university, did you ever expect to, well, for example, be giving lectures to someone your age?
So when I started university, to be completely honest, I intended to be a counseling psychologist, which I think many people do, right?
Yeah.
So I went in with the expectation that I was going to come out doing that. And I also went in with the very uninformed expectation that I would be able to do that after an undergraduate degree in psychology. I had no idea that I would have to do further study in counseling psychology for another 4 years, for example, right? But then, as you know, the lady who became my thesis supervisor invited me to become her research assistant. And when I was a student in psychology, I had gotten really interested in social psychology because, it's a kind of very exciting like subfield within social psychology. And then I got to learn about people at different universities doing different kinds of experiments. And I was like, oh my gosh, I really want to do this. Like I became uninterested in becoming a counselor and interested in doing research. So at that point, when I became interested in doing research and I realized that people who are doing research typically would get a PhD and they would stay in academia, then so in that sense, yes, it was my dream to become a lecturer from that point. But when I entered, my intention was to become a counseling psychologist. Yeah.
And I think it further supports what you said before, that just because you thought you were going to do something doesn't mean you have to carry on with that. That's very true. We have to,
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. As a matter of fact, Zink, when I started my PhD, my dissertation was going to be about behavior in romantic relationships. And then I realized I'm not the least bit interested in that. I did that for one semester of my life, and I decided to switch to ethnic identity because I am much more interested in ethnic behavior in my country. Like, I don't know if you know this, but we have like two major ethnic groups in my country, and we tend to vote based on the group that we belong to. Of course, not everybody does, but some people do. And I got really interested in that because in my family, I had a little bit of the opposite in the sense that my mother was of Indian descent, but her family tended to support the political party of African descent. So I grew up with like a picture of the first prime minister of our country in my grandparents' house, like in the house on the wall, along with the family pictures, right? So I thought it was really interesting how people outside of my family would kind of vote within their group. So I realized, okay, this is what I want to study. I was not interested in how people behave in their romantic relationships. So yeah, you don't have to continue something that you started on just because you did it for some time,
Yes,
Yeah. Sometimes like actually doing it gives you the experience to know, okay, maybe I actually don't want to do this particular thing. I want to do some other particular thing. Yeah.
That's very true. Um,
Yeah.
like you said, there's a lot of things that you can do with psychology. You can go to HR, you can go to counseling, clinical, educational. You just got to keep an open mind. Yeah.
Yeah.
So has there been any advice you heard from someone that changed your academic life? So apart from your supervisor telling you that, it's not going to kill you statistics, but other than that, has there been anything that changed your life?
Um, I would not say so. I think that I don't know if I would say advice, but I think the realization that you can collaborate with people is
Yeah.
probably one of the things that like kept me on this trajectory, because it's really easy to give up. But if you have support and you know that you have people who you can collaborate with, I think that that is like a thing to sustain you through. So I don't know if I have like a word of advice specifically from somebody, but that is just something that I have come to really appreciate in my life, like the whole idea of collaboration and
Yeah.
support. Yeah.
And finally, your thoughts about supportive environments and people in academics. It really struck a chord in me because, I come from a Philippines province called Isabela, and
Uh-huh.
I'm very privileged. I acknowledge that I'm very privileged that I get to go to school. Um,
Yeah.
I think it's a privilege to complain about homework, while others, are dreaming to have that, right? Um,
Yes.
so what would you say to someone, who has an unsupportive environment hoping to pursue higher education?
Yeah. I, you know what, Zink? I don't know if I would say anything to that person.
Okay.
What I would say to people who might know that person is to give them support. And, so for example, um, let's say you have parents who really want you to do some housework or to spend time with them watching TV, for example. I might say to those parents, this child is trying to succeed in school and they probably need some time to do their homework, so give them that time. I would say also maybe to neighbors, because once you're living in a somewhat built environment, your neighbors are going to affect you. I would say to neighbors, for example, think about your neighbor who might have a child who might be studying, and maybe you don't need to play music super loudly, or you don't need to play your television super loudly. So this person has an opportunity to have the quiet that they need to read or write or do whatever they need to do. Um, because I think that a person who is from a less privileged background is probably already quite motivated to succeed at school. So that person is probably quite willing to be diligent and is probably being as diligent as they can be. But they might need a little bit of support, to kind of help them along the way. I would also say, like at the level of higher education, for example, if you are a professor and you have a lot of funding, invite somebody who you can see is working hard to work with you and give them the chance um, to be exposed to more, and to, when I say exposed to more, I mean exposed to more knowledge, exposed to more people, because this will help them to kind of go further in life. um yeah, I think I'm very, very much about supportive environments rather than too much about the person, because I think that on our own we are like actually doing the best that we can do with the resources that we have, and what some people probably need is more resources.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mary. Thank you so much for your wise words. And I know that you've helped a lot of us here in this coffee chat. And once again, I don't know how much to thank you for taking time out of your schedule. I was a little nervous actually to reach out, but thank you so much once
No,
again.
why? Come on, Zink. We have been working together for some time, so you should not be at all nervous to be nervous to reach out to me. But yeah, I'm really glad you did, and I hope I don't know if my words were wise per se, but I hope it might kind of motivate people to support students.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Mary, and thank you so much, everyone, for watching this coffee chat. Thank you and bye bye.